fighting for free speech, Western civilization, and delivering common sense for the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Scott Jennings.
Rather a special day for the show. The main topic of the show today, for these next 2 hours, is it is the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump taking the oath of office to come back into office for the second time. So we're on location today. We're doing some things over in the White House complex. We're going to have some people from the White House stop by the show over the next couple of hours. We're going to talk about some polling. We're going to interview Mary Margaret Houlihan from the Daily Wire. She covers President Trump on a daily basis. We really do have a packed show for you today, all wrapped around the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump retaking the White House and getting here into his second term. Let me also just tell you that, as always, the Scott Jennings Show is brought to you by Ease Total Health. You know that health insurance is broken, and Ease can fix it for you. There are no deductibles. There are no restrictions on doctors or hospitals. It actually gives you the feeling that you could get health care if you needed it. It's a lot of benefits. You can use it on day... You get Ease, you can use it on day one. My advice is go to easeforeveryone.com/Scott, and you can learn more about it. Too much for me to list here. Go to easeforeveryone.com/Scott to learn more about Ease Total Health. Okay, where should we start? Where should we start? I was thinking about today's show, thinking about the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump coming back into the White House, and I thought I would go back to the beginning. January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump has won in a landslide in the Electoral College. He has won millions more votes than Kamala Harris, and he believes that he has a mandate from the American people to do a lot of things, and all of it was wrapped around this phrase, a revolution of common sense. In fact, I'll never forget hearing that 1 year ago today. I was sitting on the set at CNN covering the inaugural festivities, and I heard Donald Trump say, we're going to have a revolution of common sense. And I thought to myself at the time, that would make a great book. And in fact, it did make a great book. I wrote it, and it made the New York Times bestseller list by the end of last year. But that phrase, a revolution of common sense, in my opinion, really is the definition of how Donald Trump has rebranded his political movement and the Republican Party. Let's take you back to last year. This is Donald Trump speaking in the Capitol Rotunda. Remember, it was indoors because of how cold it was, speaking to the assembled about his coming revolution of common sense.
Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
That was Donald J. Trump 1 year ago today, talking about the revolution of common sense. And really what you heard there was him discussing all of the things that he needed to do to get the nation's immigration crisis and border security crisis under control. And he has done it. There are literally no border crossings anymore. The border is closed. And we have enforcement going on in this country that simply wasn't going on when Joe Biden was the president. They have deported under Trump in the last year about 2.6 million people. About 2 million of those people have self-deported. And over 600,000 have been deported under ICE operations. And obviously this is in the news because of what's going on in Minnesota. You may ask, well, how did the American people take all this? The Wall Street Journal did a survey this weekend, and they asked voters who is best able to handle, meaning which party, Republicans or Democrats, is best able to handle border security. By a 28-point margin, Republicans are best able to handle border security. They asked who's best able to handle immigration. By an 11-point margin, Republicans are more trusted than Democrats to handle immigration. So on the president's signature issue, on the issue around which he said we'll have a revolution of common sense, it is the Republicans right now, in my opinion, who are benefiting politically. And it's amazing. You look around the country, the only chaos that exists is really in Minneapolis. The only other hiccups have been in other blue cities that have sanctuary policies. But it's in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that has the biggest issue. And what two ingredients do they have that nobody else has? Tim Walz and Jacob Fry. That's the two ingredients in this chaos cake that's being baked by Democrats in Minnesota. What else has gone on in the last year with Donald Trump? Well, a lot of conversation around the economy. Has he, in fact, fixed the economy? There's some evidence that independent voters are still reeling from cost of living in this country. But in the Wall Street Journal survey this weekend, who do you trust on the economy, Republicans or Democrats? By a 6-point margin, Republicans are more trusted. Who do you trust on inflation and rising prices? By a 6-point margin, people trust Republicans more than Democrats. Who do you trust on tariffs? A lot of discussion about tariffs in the last year since the president did Liberation Day. By a 2-point margin, the Republican Party is trusted more on the issue of tariffs. So even as you hear the talking heads in mainstream media talk to you all the time about how nobody is happy and this and that has gone wrong for Donald Trump, what's the truth? Well, in the latest polling, Republicans have more trust than Democrats. And on top of that, if you look at the economic numbers that have come in, GDP up, inflation down, you're seeing the economic indicators predicted by Team Trump start to come to pass. If you talk to Scott Bessent, if you talk to the president's economic advisors, they believe all of the steps they took in year one, passing the big beautiful bill, the tariffs, the reconfiguring of our trade arrangements, is going to pay huge dividends in year two. What about on the issue of foreign affairs in the Wall Street Journal poll? Who do you trust on foreign policy? By a 5-point margin, it was the Republicans more than the Democrats on foreign policy. Who do you trust on the Russia-Ukraine war? By a 4-point margin, it was the Republicans who are more trusted on the Russia-Ukraine war. Outside of immigration, foreign affairs may be the president's top issue from the first year back in office. He has settled 8 conflicts. He brought home the living hostages from Gaza back into Israel. He is steadily working to bring peace in the world and stability to the Western Hemisphere. So as we get into these issues today, we're going to talk to some people from the White House. We're going to interview Mary Margaret Houlihan after this next commercial break about her views. But the story today is it's been a year. Donald Trump is back in office, and we're at the White House, and we're bringing you all the information about it today. A quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. One of the most rewarding parts of discussing Relief Factor is that I get all this mail from people like Sandra. Sandra tells us she's been hearing about Relief Factor on the radio. She'd been listening for a couple of years. She finally decided, I'm going to do it. In her words, she said she got on the 3-week quick start, and now she feels, quote, like a new person. Sandra's own words, feeling like a new person. Try it for yourself. The 3-week quick start could be a game changer for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com and imagine how good it would feel to be free of your pain. Coming up, Mary Margaret Houlihan from the Daily Wire discusses Trump's first year in office. It's Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings, a special edition of the show here on Salem. Welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. It is Tuesday, January the 20th, and this is a special edition of the Scott Jennings Show. We are broadcasting some of our show live from the White House today, and we're also talking about the president's first year in office and having some conversations with people who have been closely covering the president. One of those people is Mary Margaret Houlihan, who is the White House correspondent for the Daily Wire. Mary Margaret, thanks for joining us here on the Scott Jennings Show. Welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you, and I follow your reporting closely because you tend to know things before everybody else knows them, and so I consider you to be one of the best sources. We're having a special edition of the show today, really just to look back on the president's first year in office, and I'm over at the White House complex today. You're in the briefing room every day. Let me just ask you a simple question. After 1 year in, is the White House functioning under Donald Trump the way you expected? Differently? Give me your just impressions. You're up close and personal with the White House press office and the president every single day.
Right. So, Scott, I think a lot of us might have expected Trump 2.0 to operate, honestly, in the same way that Trump 1.0 did. And I can tell you, as someone who's covering this administration, and I know you know this yourself, this has been the most breakneck administration I have ever covered in my life. Obviously, I'm in there, I'm in the briefing room, I'm in the Oval Office, I'm up close, but there is constant level of news, constant level of announcements from the president. 1 minute you think you're talking about Iran, the next minute you're talking about Venezuela, the next minute you're talking about Minnesota, the next minute you're talking about immigration, you name it, every topic under the sun. And the president is not only juggling these balls, but he's making things happen. And I think you saw that very clearly with this raid on Maduro when they captured him and brought him back to the United States. Secretary of State Rubio said to the public, when the president says something, he means it. This is something that we didn't see with President Biden, and we haven't seen with many past presidents, but with President Donald Trump, love him or hate him, when he says he's going to do something, most often he does it. And that's what we've seen throughout the past year. But I would say perhaps the most significant thing I've noticed over the last year is that the president is keeping almost all, if not all, of his campaign promises, but he's also aggressively undoing Joe Biden's legacy. So he had to sit there for 4 years and watch Biden smear his name, go after his family, prosecute him, and really undo a lot of things that many Americans view as hurting our country. And now the president is taking very swift action to undo much of that. And there was an Axios story about this yesterday that wasn't, the language of the article wasn't super flattering to the president, but I think he and his team actually loved it, which it described how Trump is undoing Biden's whole legacy. And Biden, who wanted to be the president that came after Trump and, erased Trump, really is becoming what Axios described as a footnote in American history, whereas Trump is just literally taking the country, he's enhancing it. And a good metaphor for that is his ballroom. He's taking the White House, he's adding his ballroom, he's making the White House better. And he views this, I believe, as a legacy term, and we're seeing so much to that effect.
Mary Margaret, what would you say is the president's best issue after 1 year? And what would the White House staff say? Is it immigration? Is it his foreign policy engagement and all of his foreign policy wins? If point blank they had to answer, what is his best level of success and what issue area, what would they say and what would you say?
Well, I think Trump would have a different answer than the White House, perhaps. I think he might say, well, I ended 8 wars, almost 9. That's what he tells us all the time. And he's not wrong. that is a massive foreign policy win for him on many fronts. The White House has often pointed to immigration. He's completely closed the border. He's getting rid of illegal immigrants all over the country. He's rooting out fraud in many cities, including Minneapolis, which we're seeing very close up in these recent days. For my part, I've covered the culture wars for many years, Scott. I paid a lot of attention to abortion and gender issues specifically. I wrote a book on gender. And so at the very beginning of this administration, to see him pardon the pro-life activists who were jailed, to see him pardon all of these different individuals who had spent the last 4 years fearing for their lives under the Biden DOJ, that was particularly significant to me. And it's interesting to see so many issues that I spent years covering kind of dissipate overnight. I mean, obviously, there's still hope on the gender front that there will be federal laws passed to protect kids from gender transition, or federal laws passed to protect women who have men in their sports. But at the same time, the president has really kind of snapped his fingers and fixed a lot of issues that people like myself were covering for years. And so that's been huge to watch. And then at the same time, obviously, I think the immigration issue is really the number one for the country recently. And the work that the president has done on that front, really to completely close the border, is very significant. Yeah. And also, all across the country, DEI, you name it. There's so many different things we could get into, but I think the White House and Trump would say that.
Yeah, I think immigration, it's been the most consequential, and obviously with the border being closed, it's hard to argue with the success. Mary Margaret Houlihan covers the White House for the Daily Wire. When we come back, a big story about a railroad merger and its effect on energy that you don't want to miss. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Scott. Listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now, it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use Free Spoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from Free Spoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on Free Spoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. Free Spoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
Welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show, common sense for the American people. Tracking a business story for you today that is attracting some attention and some questions about potential impact on energy supplies and distribution. Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern Railroads announced an $85 billion merger agreement in July of 2025 to create America's first transcontinental railroad, gaining support from shareholders, but also facing significant regulatory hurdles, including a review from the Surface Transportation Board and opposition from some major unions like the Teamsters. And on top of that, there are some folks out there who are worried about what this merger could do to energy distribution and energy prices for average consumers. Energy affordability, energy reliability, energy security. These are big topics here on the Scott Jennings Show. And to discuss all of this today, I welcome to the show Daniel Turner, who is CEO of an organization called Power the Future. Daniel, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Scott, great to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I want to dive in and talk energy and this merger and how they are related. You recently argued in a column on townhall.com that this, quote, $85 billion merger between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern would be a derailment waiting to happen for America's energy future. Explain, my friend.
Yeah, this is a really important issue because when you think about how much of our energy is transported by rail, right? Obviously, we have a very large infrastructure of pipelines, but for example, coal is never going to be transported through a pipeline. But there is a lot of oil and gas transported around the country on rail as well, not to mention personnel, equipment, machinery. And our concern here is that when you get these big mergers, you get rid of competition, you get rid of competitive pricing, and prices go up. And when you look at a lot of big mergers that have happened over the years, you look at initiatives in the banking world, well, we have fewer, larger, wealthier, more powerful banks. We don't have a better banking system since Warren's banking initiatives or Dodd-Frank. Same is true with healthcare. We have fewer, stronger, wealthier, more powerful healthcare companies. We don't have more options and more affordability. So our concern in the rail industry is this: if we create these behemoth monopolies, we lose competitive pricing, and that is bad for energy writ large, and it's bad for consumers.
Before we get back to the merger issue, as you know, I am from Kentucky, so I know a little bit about the coal industry there. Given all your work in this sector, in this field over the last several years, do you believe that coal still has a big future for America's energy matrix? We have some people out there that still trying to get rid of it, although we see our competitors on the world stage like China still using a lot of coal out there.
Well, you know, when I've testified before Congress on this issue, there's very simple numbers here that are just commonsensical. The world's coal consumption continues to go up. America's coal consumption continues to increase. What's happening is that America's production is diminishing. And so as the pie gets bigger, America's slice is getting smaller. And I don't see how that's green, right? And we can have a whole separate conversation about climate change and emissions and all of that. But you can't tell me that it is good that China and Indonesia and Malaysia are manufacturing coal and America is not. If you believe it's a global issue, for example. And again, I started Power of the Future because as we are pushing towards mining in Indonesia and China and Malaysia, we're telling hundreds of thousands of American coal miners, you know, sorry, we don't care. Get a job, right? Learn to code, do something else. And the tragedy that we've inflicted on rural coal communities, opioids, suicide, depression, poverty, all because it's easier to let these things happen in China. That's why Power of the Future was born. American miners should not lose out because it's more profitable to have 9-year-old girls in central China mine coal and slave mines.
Let's talk about energy policy in the macro, and then I promise you we'll get back to the merger issue. Obviously, some energy deregulation took place in the big, beautiful bill last summer. Gas prices are pretty low right now, although in some places, energy prices are going up for consumers. As the Republicans in the House start to look at this next budget reconciliation process, what is the single thing, the single piece of advice that you would give them about energy policy that they could do to help bring down costs for consumers and businesses who are seeing higher prices, frankly, because of policies that have been uneven around the country?
Coal. We go back to coal. The best thing you could do, the Biden administration shuttered over 100 functioning coal mines nationwide. There was no referendum, there was no vote, there was no act of Congress. They just used the weaponized EPA. And I'm sure leftists celebrated and said, this is good for the earth, it's good for the climate. Well, that's not true, first of all. And second of all, certainly not good for our pocketbooks. So we have taken offline so many kilowatts and megawatts of reliable electricity production, all in the hopes of one day we will build wind, one day we will build solar. One of the best examples, and you recall this event, July of 2022, a sweaty Joe Biden was in an empty field outside of Boston. He talked about the evils of coal. It's when he told everyone, me and all of my friends have cancer, and everyone scratched their head and said, did Biden just say he has cancer? Right, that was a coal mine, a coal plant. It produced 800 megawatts of power for the Boston area. They gladly demolished it. They got rid of the jobs. And he said, one day we will build. Well, they haven't, and they're never going to. And this wasn't because of Trump. No one bid on an offshore plant. No one bid on a solar plant. So they took away what was working, And how is electricity prices in Massachusetts? They've gone through the roof. So the best thing we could do on affordability is reopen as many coal and natural gas and nuclear and hydro, but reopen what the Biden administration foolishly shuttered.
That's Daniel Turner. He's the CEO of Power the Future. Daniel, you've obviously been tracking over the years a lot about the sources of energy in this country. Now you're interested in how that energy is moved around, the transportation of that energy, which is, I think, what attracted your attention to this proposed merger of these railroads. Tell us about this op-ed that you wrote in townhall.com. Tell us about your organization's concerns. If this merger goes through, what will happen to energy prices and American energy dominance?
Yeah, what will happen in the simplest is that you have less competition, and that's bad for markets in any industry. It's bad if you own a sandwich shop. It's bad if you own a grocery store. Competition keeps prices low. And so our concern is that as we are bringing more American energy online, whether we're mining it, whether we're producing it from the ground, that has to be transported. And if we have just one monopoly, it will be like Amtrak. Right now, I take Amtrak a lot from New York City to Boston, back to DC, et cetera, et cetera. Look at how much Amtrak costs and look at its reliability. I'm no knock to Secretary Duffy; he's trying his hardest, right? But why did the rest of the world seem to have mastered rail, and America hasn't? And the reason why is because they have multiple competitive lines. So I don't want to see one behemoth rail company that will control pricing if we're going to try to keep prices low.
Discussing the potential merger between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern here. So the application to get federal approval has been filed by the parties here in front of the Surface Transportation Board. I guess that happened right before Christmas. What happens next? What will the Surface Transportation Board be looking at? What questions will they be asking, and will you be engaging in that process?
We are engaged in that process. We sent a letter to Chairman Fuchs expressing our concern, and we referenced a 2001 decision by the Surface Transportation Board on mergers. And their criteria is mergers have to be beneficial for pricing and competitiveness. And we're arguing this will do the exact opposite. And you know, I understand people's hesitation. You don't want to tinker with the private sector. You have to let companies operate, of course. But there is also a role for government in preventing these types of monopolies. And, you know, I used the banking example. I used the healthcare example. Even if that was not the intended consequence, and you can argue whether or not Elizabeth Warren wanted fewer, bigger banks, but if that was not the intended consequence, but that is the reality, right? The reality is we have fewer, larger, richer, more powerful companies, and that is not good for pricing. So I don't want to see that happen to rail like I've seen it happen to other sectors. We've got to get this energy out of the ground. We've got to refine it. We've got to produce it and get it to places so that affordability continues to come down. And one more obstacle would be a behemoth monopoly that is jacking up prices.
Now, devil's advocate, the railroads would say, hey, if you let us merge, we'll have greater efficiencies, we'll be able to do more together, and we might even be able to drive prices down overall in the rail business. How would you answer that retort from them?
Yeah, the best example of what's going to happen in the future is what has happened in the past. And in the past, as we've seen these mergers happen, we've seen affordability go through the roof. We've seen pricing go through the roof and options. And that's just not just in the rail space. That's an industry writ large. And we do better as a free market when we have more options, more competition in the space. That's what keeps prices low. And the simplest example is just, you know, look at your local town. If you have 3 or 4 grocery stores, that's a hell of a lot better than having just one. If you have 3 or 4 coffee shops, that's better than having just one. And we want coal miners and we want oil and gas workers to say, hey, we've got options what railroad we're going to put our product on. If there's only one option, they will now set the price. That's just human nature. That unfortunately, that's just how the world works. It's a responsibility of government to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, you've laid out the potential harm that this merger would cause. Do you believe the Surface Transportation Board or the people who are serving on it now agree with you? Is it a little mysterious where they are? Do you have any idea where their leanings may be as this process begins?
I don't. The only newest development in large-scale mergers that have made national news is the Netflix one that President Trump even took to Truth Social and said this would not be a good thing. So my hunch is that the president and his administration are in tune with this to say, yeah, we don't want big monster companies to develop. We don't want these things to get too big. We want options. We want affordability. We want competitiveness. So I'm hoping that that's the direction that we continue to go as a country. That's just classic capitalism, classic belief in free markets, and this concern of corporatism that kind of then tends to dominate the conversation.
10 seconds to go. Daniel, you are the founder and executive director of Power the Future. Where do we find your organization on the internet?
PowerTheFuture.com, and you can find this letter and all the other stuff we do to support American energy workers. And thanks for having me on your show, Scott. It means a lot.
Thanks for being here today. Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power the Future. Common sense for the American people. More when we come back. Welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. Coming up on the end of the first hour here, and it is the one-year anniversary of Donald Trump taking the oath of office for a second time. And we're doing the show today from the White House complex. We're looking back on the first year of Trump in office, and we're going to do that in the next hour with some really, really special guests. We have Judge Jeanine Pirro, who is the district attorney for the District of Columbia. She wants to talk about crime fighting in the District of Columbia. We have the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, is going to talk about efforts to close down the Department of Education and reduce that bureaucracy. We have Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who is the director of the National Institute of Health, talking about recovering public confidence in the health regime in this country following all the mistakes that were made in COVID. Also, a little bit about the Make America Healthy agenda. And I think the interview of the day is with Todd Lyons. Todd Lyons is the acting director of ICE. You've seen him on television, no doubt. He is in the middle of this situation in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He's overseeing all ICE operations in the country. We have 4,000 ICE agents and staff and personnel in Minneapolis. We're going to talk to Todd Lyons about that. And I want to give you a little taste of this interview. It's coming up at 33 minutes past the next hour. But Todd Lyons made a couple of things very, very clear. Number one, it is the position of the Trump administration to ask and hopefully get cooperation from Minnesota. If they did that, what would happen? ICE agents would be reduced in Minnesota because they would be getting cooperation, and the transfers of the aliens would happen in the jails. And number two, I want you to hear that. I'm going to play this right now. Listen to what happens when an ICE agent in Minneapolis comes under attack out in the field. You will not believe your ears. This is the acting director of ICE, Todd Lyons. Here's a little teaser of our full interview coming up in the next hour. Let me go back to this issue of cooperation, and because I think this is getting lost in all of the back and forth. Is it the position of the Trump administration that if Minnesota officials, Governor Walz and Mayor Fry and the police there, if they would cooperate with ICE in the same way you're getting cooperation in, say, Dallas or places in Florida, anywhere in the country, that the ICE presence that you have would not be necessary?
100%. And, if we had that cooperation, like I said, in the jails, or better yet, if we had the cooperation when our officers and agents are attacked on the street, we wouldn't see this many people out there.
Now, let me ask you this. If an ICE agent is attacked on the street, what does the Minneapolis police do?
Right now, they don't do anything.
An ICE agent comes under attack, say like the story the other day where the agent was hit with the shovels by the 3 Venezuelan nationals. The Minneapolis Police Department does not respond to help the ICE agent?
No, and that's the problem with a lot of these jurisdictions is they're pitting law enforcement officers against each other. So it's not a red state or a blue state issue. I can give you a great example. While the city of New York may be a sanctuary jurisdiction, the NYPD will come out and assist us or come out and squash any type of protest before it starts.
So let me just, for the record, you're asking here on the Scott Jennings Show today, your appeal to Minnesota would be, please cooperate with us and please allow the Minneapolis police to assist fellow law enforcement if they come under attack.
Yes, I would say please turn over your criminal illegal aliens to us in a secure environment so you don't have us out on the streets. But if we are on the streets making those arrests, help protect our agents and your neighborhoods by keeping these protesters at bay.
That was Todd Lyons, the acting director of ICE, and we have so much more with Todd Lyons. I'll tell you what I did with Todd. He just left here, by the way. We went through a lot of the accusations that are made against ICE. You know, do they have the proper training? Do they have the right experience? Are you targeting American citizens? You hear all these things on your television day after day after day. I went through all of these accusations with Todd Lyons. You hear the accusations, you are going to get the truth of the matter from Todd Lyons coming up in the next hour. It's Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings broadcasting to you today from the White House complex. 1 year ago, Donald Trump put his hand on the Bible and he took the oath of office and he promised the American people a revolution of common sense. Has he delivered? My opinion, he absolutely has. And he's trying to change this country and recover this country and restore this country from a disastrous 4 years under Joe Biden. It was a disaster for the economy because of the inflationary policies. It was a disaster for criminal justice. They didn't want criminal justice laws. They didn't want laws and criminals enforced or taken off the street. It was a disaster for immigration, for border enforcement. They're telling ICE, don't enforce the laws. It was a disaster on the world stage because of American weakness. All of these things have been reversed and or corrected already by President Trump and his administration. You're going to hear from the people making it happen when we come back. It's Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here. Stay with us on Salem.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
This is the 1 year anniversary of President Trump taking the Oval Office for the second time. And we are broadcasting the Scott Jennings Show today from the White House complex. We have an amazing set of interviews for you today. People who work closely with the president every single day. You can see one of them sitting next to me if you're following on the video feed right now. This is the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. We'll get to her in just a moment. As always, by the way, the Scott Jennings Show is brought to you by Ease Total Health. Health insurance is broken. Ease makes it better. There's no deductibles, no restrictions on doctors, no restrictions on hospitals. It's a set of benefits that you can use on day one. Learn more about Ease. Go to easeforeveryone.com/Scott. It's Common Sense for the American people. And we are here, Secretary McMahon, on the 1 year anniversary of the president taking the oath of office. And in his inaugural address, he said to the American people, I will have a revolution of common sense. Has the president delivered on the promise?
I think he certainly has. Boy, we've seen it in so many levels of government. You know, education is certainly one of those.
So you're running the Department of Education. I heard you give a speech the other day, and you said you were the only person in government whose job it is to eliminate their own job because the president has promised to eliminate the Department of Education. What is going on that front? This is obviously something conservatives had wanted to do for many decades.
Well, I think we're making good progress, and the president was very sincere about getting the bureaucracy out of education. And that's his main concern, that there's so much bureaucracy that is in Washington, D.C. He clearly is a strong supporter of education. He's clearly showed it in the One Big Beautiful Bill, in which we had, for the first time, a national school choice program that's part of that. He has just simply said, let's take a look at what we're doing and making sure we're doing it for the people, bring education closest to the child, because that is the best place for it to be. Teachers, parents, school superintendents, governors know better than Washington, D.C., which is better for their schools to support their communities.
When you took over the Department of Education, what were some of the things that you found inside the bureaucracy that were absolutely an impediment, in your opinion, to actually improving educational outcomes in this country?
Well, just how long it took to get things done. I mean, one of the things that we have done, we just signed, taking education back to the states, a waiver for the state of Iowa. They applied for it, which allowed the governor to combine several grant streams into one and to distribute them the way that she felt was best for the state, and that's going to save dollars. It's going to save them about $8 million on this one particular grant, and so that's one of the things that we're doing. We want to save dollars. We want to cut through the red tape.
So overall reduction in bureaucracy is occurring at the Department of Education. To fully eliminate it, it would require an act of Congress, right?
Yes, it does.
And do you believe the Republicans up on the Hill are going to try to go for it this year?
We certainly are pushing strongly for it. There'll be measures that are already being put into place that will continue, more of them continue to be put into place for this year. I call it a proof of concept. You know, we're signing interagency agreements to move some sections of the department to other agencies, letting them work, letting people work together. It's still under the budget of education with supervision from education, but it's really meshing with people in other agencies. The first ones we signed are with labor. We're already seeing the success in that of getting payments out the door for grants quicker because they have a better technology system.
Yeah, this is one of the things about closing up this bureaucracy at education that I think is important. It's not like you're eliminating services. You're moving them to other parts of the federal government under your supervision. People are still interacting with the educational programs. It's just we're reducing the bureaucracy, streamlining those interactions.
Well, yes, absolutely. And take, for instance, there were 23 workforce programs in government that were part of, you know, not only education, but across all different agencies. So we've consolidated those and moved them into the Department of Labor. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that part of the common sense measure the president is looking for?
Sounds like common sense to me. Let me also go into another aspect of your job. You are part of a big group that's working on the 250th anniversary of our country. You know, I shudder to think what would be happening if we had not won the election in November of 2024. We'd be apologizing for America. Instead, we're going to be celebrating America here in the 250th birthday coming up on July the 4th. What are you doing on that?
Well, we have we're working with a coalition of 50 different members going to different states on our History Rocks tour, the Trail to Independence. It is really fun. We go to middle schools and high schools. We actually have competitions, and they're based on, you know, questions from about the states relative to signing the Declaration of Independence, as well as, you know, national questions. We have winners. We give out prizes. The whole auditorium full of kids just is so enthusiastic and supportive, and they're really enjoying it, and they're really looking forward to the 250th celebration.
I think this is part of the president's leadership on this front. We're trying to teach kids to love America.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people on the left in this country who would love to and have been teaching kids to hate America, or that America is somehow rotten at its core. But it seems to me that part of the project here is we have to remind people we live in the greatest country on earth.
Yeah, and that's exactly how all of the comments and the speeches start in all of these assemblies. This is the greatest country on earth, and we're going to celebrate her this 250th year. And it is amazing. The kids really get into it.
Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, our first guest here, the 2 o'clock hour on the Scott Jennings Show. We're broadcasting from the White House today on President Trump's one-year anniversary of taking the oath of office for a second time. I want to ask you, Secretary McMahon, take us inside the Oval Office. You're part of the cabinet. You're involved in a lot of high-level meetings with the president. You interact with him often. You have a long-standing relationship with him. For our listeners, take us into the decision-making process of Donald Trump. How does it work in the room when he's looking at an issue and needs to make a decision? How do you get him to that decision point? How does he ingest information, and how does that interaction work?
He's incredibly quick on the downtake for information. He understands it. And of course, it's not that he hasn't looked at it before you get there. He's had briefings. He understands what the issues are. You go in. He expects you to really know your position very well. He can grill you, and he really expects you to know the answers. But he's very decisive. He'll either give you a clear direction when you're leaving about other things you need to look at, or he'll make a decision while you're there. And you don't ever have a question about where you stand or where his direction is. He's great to work for. He's a great boss.
Talk to us about the interplay with the cabinet. It seems to me part of the ethos of Trump 2.0 here is that he's got the cabinet and the staff that matches his leadership style, and it feels like that is filtering out to the government, where you have a lot of cohesion among the different cabinet officers. Give us some personal color on the interplay between you and some of the other cabinet secretaries.
Well, it's an unbelievable collaboration. This is a cabinet. First of all, we know each other. A lot of us knew each other in the first administration or through America First Policy Institute. We really do work together. We understand that if labor is working on a project that might involve SBA, that might involve ed, we all get together. We talk about it. We will do press conferences. We'll do meetings on the road as we tour the different states. An incredibly not only collaborative but corroborative cabinet.
So we got about a minute to go here, Secretary McMahon. We know what you've been working on in year one. We know you're working on the 250th anniversary project. What are some other policy or leadership issues you're working on for year two at the Department of Education? We know you're trying to shut it down, but as you think about planning for the next 12 months, what can the American people expect out of your office?
Well, you can certainly expect us to continue to enforce Title IX. I was on the Supreme Court steps last week. We're hopeful that the Supreme Court will make a pretty quick decision on this. We want to make sure that our colleges and universities continue to operate as those centers for truth seekers, that they are doing away with any anti-Semitism or any kind of discriminatory policies that they have, that they vet students who are coming in, that grades are based on merit and not grade inflation of just pushing people along. So we have a long list on higher ed, and then middle schools as well, looking at different pathways to jobs. We have a workforce shortage in this country, so we want to make sure that community colleges and other schools are working to create those pathways.
That's Secretary Linda McMahon. When we come back, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is here on Salem. Really appreciate Linda McMahon coming by today, a big part of the president's administration. A quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. You know, one of the most rewarding things about talking about Relief Factor is we get these stories, we get letters, we get testimonials from all sorts of customers out there. I want to tell you the story of Sandra. She had been hearing about Relief Factor on the radio for years, and she finally decided to try it because nothing else was helping with her back pain. Here's the quote: "With the 3-week quick start, I just went for it. Now I feel like a new person." That's what Sandra is saying. And I'm going to tell you, we're using it in the Jennings household. My dad's using it. We know that Relief Factor works. Sandra knows that Relief Factor works. Here's how you get in touch with Relief Factor. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. Ask yourself, how would it feel to be out of pain? With Relief Factor, you... And welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. It is the 1-year anniversary of President Trump retaking the White House, and we are broadcasting today from the White House complex. We have great guests lined up for you, including the guy sitting right next to me, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's the director of the National Institute of Health. Doc, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Scott, thanks for having me on. It's an absolute honor.
Well, we're glad you're here, and we're glad you're in your job because, and this is where I want to start, it seems to me that one of the big jobs that you had when you took this appointment from President Trump was to rebuild public confidence in the public health regime. After COVID, a lot of people had a lot of questions, and a lot of people thought they were lied to and misled. What did you find when you arrived, and how have you tackled that important issue?
I mean, first, you're absolutely right. I mean, the school closures, the mask mandates, you remember the plexiglass everywhere, none of that did anything, and other than like cause us all distress. And we had among the highest all-cause excess death rates in the world during COVID. But science is still important. Science is still central to if it functioning well, it does cures. So what we've done is we've refocused the NIH on things that actually matter for the American people. We got rid of all the DEI. That was a huge lift because people had to sign essentially DEI loyalty oaths inside the NIH. Got rid of that. Got rid of the funding for the DEI. And it's still going to the courts that were involved.
And what does that mean? Does that mean science was being wrapped around DEI regulations instead of being the preeminent issue in the department?
I mean, basically, it's a question of mission. The mission is to improve is to do research that extends life and cures people, right? That's the mission. The mission had extended to solving social justice problems. A lot of the research agenda focused on documenting differences and attributing it to systemic racism, differences in race and certain outcomes. Instead, now we're saying it's for everybody, whether you're black, white, whatever. We're going to focus on research that makes you healthier.
So on that front, one of the big announcements from the Trump administration and the MAHA agenda has been around the dietary guidelines, which just came out. Your NIH was very instrumental in putting this together. What should Americans know about the new dietary guidelines?
Well, it's a huge sea change, Scott. It puts eating healthy food, eating real food at the core of the dietary guidelines. It restores the science that underlies the new dietary guidelines has been looked at for years, and yet it never came to the public consciousness. Like, so for instance, dietary fat. Remember how fat was bad for you?
I remember.
You remember how eggs were bad for you?
I remember.
The science...
And you're talking to a chicken farmer, and I know that's not true. Eggs are good for you. It's nature's superfood.
Well, that's the funny thing. Like, I grew up, our family was scared of eggs.
Yeah.
I didn't have an egg till like I was in college.
Oh my goodness gracious!
And then it was like egg whites. They were terrible, Scott.
Yeah, I know.
And it was because
go for the whole egg. That's my advice.
That's what I eat now. They're superfood. They're fantastic.
So, dietary guidelines is a big accomplishment of year one at the NIH. Let me ask you about year two. You are working on something called the replication crisis. You mentioned this to me earlier, and I'm going to be candid with you. I've not heard of this, but this is a big issue going on in the background that the American public needs to know about.
Yeah, so it turns out a lot of science that we fund, not just science generally, including biological sciences, people publish papers and top journals, but it turns out that independent people look at it, it doesn't replicate, doesn't that same thing. You don't find the same thing. That actually was the core of the trust crisis during COVID. You had authority determining what was true or false in physical reality, rather than sort of independent scientists looking at the same thing. We're going to change that. We're going to fix that with the NIH. We're going to fund people to check the science of other people, and we're going to make replication the core basis of truth rather than authority.
How do you think things are going? We've got about a minute and a half here. What do you think? How do you think things are going out there with research? I mean, there's been a lot of conversation the last year about research going on in universities, funding for research, what kind of research is being done. What's the relationship between NIH and all these researchers out there who are, doing what you said you want to do, which is try to get to cures, try to make people healthier?
I mean, that's the NIH is the single most important biomedical research institute support in the world. It sets the direction for scientific research. When you had an NIH that was focused on DEI, focused on dangerous gain-of-function work, focused on really ideological crusades, it went astray. Under President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, we're now focused on research that advances the health and longevity of the American people. It's a world of difference. We're taking authority. Just because I say something is true doesn't mean it's true. Instead, it's independent scientists looking at the same thing, finding the same answer. That's the key idea that will drive research forward.
That's Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He is the director of the National Institute of Health, and you've had an eventful year, the dietary guidelines, restoring public confidence from COVID. You've got this replication issue, a lot of research issues out there. I know you've been very busy. We're grateful for you coming by to stop here on the President's one-year anniversary of retaking office. When we come back on the show, important interview, Todd Lyons, the acting director of ICE, is here. Don't miss it. It's Common Sense for the American people. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. Tuesday, January 20th. Common Sense for the American people here on Salem. We're broadcasting the show today from the White House complex. It is the one-year anniversary of Donald Trump retaking the White House. And in his inaugural address, he said, "We'll have a revolution of common sense." And a lot of that in that speech was aimed directly at ending the Biden border crisis and getting immigration enforcement under control. And our special guest to talk about all of that, Todd Lyons, who is the director of ICE. Todd, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
So you're obviously in one of the most stressful government jobs right now because of what's going on in Minneapolis, the job that you were given to do around the country. What I'd like to start with is just to let you talk a little bit. Your view of Minneapolis right now. We have a lot of ICE agents on the ground. We're in the news every day. There's a lot of issues going on. When you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed at night, what is your holistic view of this situation? How is it going? Why and how could it be better?
Sure. Well, the big thing, Scott, I hope, the American public remembers is the fact of why we got there in the first place. We were there. Homeland Security Investigations was investigating a $9 billion fraud scheme.
Yep.
Originally, that's what we went there for. At the same time, though, we were always on the ground doing our ICE immigration enforcement mission, right? So we've always been in Minneapolis. It's nothing new. We are out there arresting the worst of the worst. One thing that's really frustrating for us is you constantly hear all the time, if ICE shows up with a criminal warrant, if a judge signs off on this case, we'll support you. Much like Los Angeles, where we had the riots, where we went to do a worksite enforcement. We actually had a criminal warrant, and we still came across protest. Now we're out there doing a lawful law enforcement mission, and we have American citizens and lawful permanent residents and some illegal aliens that are involving themselves in a law enforcement situation and making it dangerous for everybody. And, kind of to what the president's point was, common sense. Common sense would be you work with federal law enforcement, and we're just not seeing that. So while we're out there trying to do our mission, they're releasing criminal aliens back on the street. We have to go arrest them. Now we need more agents and officers to protect the cops out there arresting people. I go to bed every night, and my biggest concern is the men and women of ICE and their safety, and they go home safe every night. Right now, Minneapolis is just not a safe place, but we have to make sure we protect our officers and agents, but we have to protect the communities of Minnesota as well.
So let's talk about the ICE presence in Minneapolis. There are how many ICE agents in Minneapolis right now?
Right now we have about, total between all our components, about 4,000 folks on the ground.
And is that the most staff you have in any metropolitan area in the country?
Right now, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about why that is. In cities and states across this country, ICE, Department of Homeland Security, is getting cooperation from state and local officials. And when you're talking about cooperation, what does that look like? Give me an example of where cooperation is working perfectly.
I'll give you a great example. If we'll give a jurisdiction in Texas, say Dallas Sheriff's Office. We have a immigration enforcement officer stationed there. People come in, they screen them as well. They place detainers on them. They determine that person's here illegally in the country. Oh, and he's a public safety threat because a local law enforcement agency decided to put him behind bars. And then when the state or the locals are done with that individual, they turn him over in a safe, secure environment. That's cooperation.
In the jails.
In the jails.
So we're talking about an illegal alien that is a threat to public safety, picked up by local law enforcement. You put a detainer on them, and then the locals work with your guys to just transfer them in an administrative way. This is as easy as it gets. This is what cooperation looks like.
100%. That is what the best example of cooperation I can give.
So in Minneapolis, we have the opposite of that. There is no cooperation, meaning they pick up an illegal alien who is a violent person. They then let them out of jail. They go back on the street, and then that forces ICE to have to go chase them down on the street, in the neighborhoods, in the communities, which is why you have to have a larger presence, yes?
100%. So for us, it would only take 1 or 2 agents or officers to take custody of them in a secure jail environment. Back in traditional days, we would go out with 5 to 6 officers to make that arrest. But now when officers and agents are being attacked by bystanders who have nothing to do with the situation or protesters come out, we're having to go out with 10 to 15 additional individuals just to protect that arrest team.
So you've got people who are chasing down violent illegal aliens, and then you have people protecting the people who are chasing down violent illegal aliens.
100%.
So this is why you have so many people in Minneapolis. As you know, I sit in my job at CNN every night, and I hear a lot of accusations made against ICE. I want to go through some of this and just let you debunk some of the myths that are out there. Number one, they say ICE is targeting American citizens to arrest and deport. Is this true?
That is not true at all. 100% false.
Okay. How would an American citizen get ensnared in a situation with ICE? What's the most common way that would happen?
Common, we've seen it play out right now, is when they interject themselves in a law enforcement situation, when they impede or harass or assault officers or agents.
Okay. What if, say, an American citizen is harboring illegal aliens in their home? Is that another way they could come into contact?
That's another way as well. Or if you're an employer and you're employing illegal aliens or a part of a forced labor network, you can be encountered that way through a criminal investigation.
And let's go into these interactions between American citizens and ICE agents who are in the field doing their job, performing lawful law enforcement activity. What are you seeing? I mean, obviously, we know the tragic situation with the shooting. An agent was hit with a car. What other kinds of ways are you seeing people come after and assault ICE agents?
Previous to Minnesota, we used to see people just come up, try to stick a cell phone in an officer or agent's face, try to record it, yelling at them from across the street. Then it started slowly picking up more. Then we started seeing the vehicle incidents. Not necessarily ramming at the beginning, but, blocking officers, agents in so they couldn't go to a next arrest. Then, through a lot of the political rhetoric, when they talked about actually things you could do to impede ICE officers, we saw individuals going in and trying to rescue, if you will, grab the illegal alien out from the officers, pushing the officers out of the way. Because, the left has this rhetoric that you're an American citizen, ICE can't touch you. Right. But if you touch a law enforcement officer, you're going to jail.
Right. So you have American citizens who are trying to grab illegal aliens who are being apprehended and rip them away?
Rip them away.
And so this is a felony. Under federal law, interfering with law enforcement is a felony, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so, it is amazing to me the irresponsibility of the rhetoric out here. People are being trained to inject themselves into situations, and now they're in harm's way. They could be charged with a felony, or they could get injured. This is important. The public service announcement here is when you inject yourself into a law enforcement situation, you are putting yourself in danger.
100%. And that's a lot of these incidents we see are people injecting themselves into a situation that they just don't need to be there. We're all for peaceful protest, but do it in a safe and smart way. What they're doing now is not smart.
All right, this voice you're hearing today, Todd Lyons. He is the director of ICE. We're talking about all the issues with immigration enforcement. Let me tell you another myth that I hear all the time, and that is that ICE agents aren't trained. They're not trained properly. You're hiring people and throwing them out onto the streets without any training whatsoever. What say you to that accusation?
I debunk that totally, too. So what we've done, Scott, is we went and we looked at everything holistically, right? And efficiency of government, we want to look at what we can do to make sure we're sending everyone out there, top, well-trained officers on the street, but also using our time wisely. So what ICE has done is we've recruited a lot of former federal law enforcement, current federal law enforcement, state and local. So we're able to use their training and their experience as well. But we still have everyone that goes through the FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Everyone's still trained in defensive tactics. Everyone has qualification scores. They have PT standards. It is still the same. We just went from having 8-hour class days to 12-hour class days, 6 days a week, to make sure we can get more men and women out on the street. But we have not subsided on our standards. That was one thing I stood firm on. We weren't going to do that. And I made sure the training staff figured out a way that we have the best trained people out on the street and still meeting the president's goal of getting 10,000 new agents.
So the accusation that you're hiring somebody on a Wednesday and throwing them out on the street on a Thursday with no training is totally false.
Completely false.
And the accusation that you have reduced or degraded training requirements or the standards to become an ICE agent, that is false.
That is false.
How is recruitment going? Because you were given an additional budget in the big, beautiful bill to hire more ICE agents. How is recruitment going under that new program?
Recruitment's going great. We've met our goal, but we're actually exceeding it now. We're still going to hire more. You would think with all the bad publicity that ICE is getting right now, there'd be we'd have a stoppage, but we don't. We have over 220,000 applicants. American law enforcement officers that wanted to come and be a part of a good organization, good federal law enforcement career, and it still continues. We still have people every day putting in to be an ICE special agent or deportation officer.
So the people that are on the streets in Minneapolis have all the proper training, and in the case of many of these folks, they've been with the agency for years and years and years. So it's not as though they are brand new to this. In fact, the agent that was involved in the shooting the other day, 10-year guy, in fact, had been hit by a car last summer and had 35 stitches in his leg. So these are people who are not just trained but experienced.
Yep, they have the experience, and not only do they have the experience with ICE, they have a lot of experience from other law enforcement agencies as well. Our officer that was involved in that shooting, he served proudly in the Border Patrol, was a member of their special response team, so he was well trained.
Let me go back to this issue of cooperation, and because I think this is getting lost in all of the back and forth. Is it the position of the Trump administration that if Minnesota officials, Governor Walz and Mayor Fry and the police there, if they would cooperate with ICE in the same way you're getting cooperation in, say, Dallas or places in Florida, anywhere in the country, that the ICE presence that you have would not be necessary?
100%. And, if we had that cooperation, like I said, in the jails, or better yet, if we had the cooperation when our officers and agents are attacked on the street, we wouldn't see this many people out there.
Now, let me ask you this. If an ICE agent is attacked on the street, what does the Minneapolis police do?
Right now, they don't do anything.
An ICE agent comes under attack, say like the story the other day where the agent was hit with the shovels
by the 3 Venezuelan nationals. The Minneapolis Police Department does not respond to help the ICE agent?
No, and that's the problem with a lot of these jurisdictions is they're pitting law enforcement officers against each other. So it's not a red state or a blue state issue. I can give you a great example. While the city of New York may be a sanctuary jurisdiction, the NYPD will come out and assist us or come out and squash any type of protest before it starts.
So let me just, for the record, you're asking here on the Scott Jennings Show today, your appeal to Minnesota would be, please cooperate with us and please allow the Minneapolis police to assist fellow law enforcement if they come under attack.
Yes, I would say please turn over your criminal illegal aliens to us in a secure environment so you don't have us out on the streets. But if we are on the streets making those arrests, help protect our agents and your neighborhoods by keeping these protesters at bay.
And the kinds of people you're encountering, these are the worst of the worst. Give me just a few examples of the kinds of crimes that have been committed by these illegal aliens.
Yeah, I can give you 3 last night. We had one that was arrested for a distribution of fentanyl, one that was arrested for distribution of ecstasy, over 8,000 tablets, 2 for sexual assault of a child, and a murder. You know, and we look at one that the secretary is actually out on a ride-along, was wanted out of Connecticut for a sexual assault of a child. Came to Minnesota, was arrested for a DUI, was released back on the street, and he had a pending homicide charge in his home nation. Those are the ones.
That is Todd Lyons. He is the director of ICE. He is obviously dealing with a situation in Minneapolis right now. Director Lyons, thanks for helping debunk some of these myths. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got Judge Jeanine Pirro stopping by here at the White House. It's Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings, stay with us. And thanks to Director Lyons for coming by. A quick word from our friends at Done with Debt. If you are stressed about getting out of debt, you need to hear this news. According to the Fed's latest survey, many banks have tightened their standards, and that means right now may be your best window to negotiate settlements before these lenders tighten up even further. Done with Debt is one of the best organizations I've ever seen at navigating debt relief. In fact, last year was a record year. They enrolled over $100 million in debt for our listeners and others. Here's how you get in touch with it. Visit donewithdebt.com. Talk to a debt specialist. It is free. It takes but a few minutes. Donewithdebt.com. They will get you through the debt relief process so you keep more of your paycheck every month. Imagine waking up without that weight on your shoulders. You want to make the call today. Visit donewithdebt.com. It's free. It takes a few minutes. Take it from me. These guys know what they're doing. And welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. Common Sense for the American people. Rounding out the show today as we look back on President Trump's first year in office, back in the White House. Judge Jeanine Pirro is our cleanup hitter today. Judge Jeanine, thanks for coming by the Scott Jennings Show. First time we've actually met.
Yeah.
And first time you've been on the show. I got to ask you, you had everything. Famous media person, great show, great life, and yet you laid it all down to come back into public service. Why?
First of all, you left out the most important part of my life, hair and makeup every day.
That's right.
Okay? I gave it up because law enforcement is where I started. It's my wheelhouse. I was a prosecutor, judge, a DA. It was the best job in the world. And I saw in D.C., when the president asked me, I saw a place that was simply a disaster, the 4th highest murder rate in the country a couple of years ago. And I said, you know, this is made for me. I'm going to give it all up, but I'm going to be me. This is who I am. 32 years. I mean, I was a judge as well. It was, for me, a dream job. And then I came to D.C.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about D.C. As you mentioned, I mean, a lot of problems here, but President Trump intervened. Yeah. We had National Guard come in. You also had a real focus on just day-to-day law enforcement in the District of Columbia. How much better is it today than when you got here?
The change is not only palpable, it's visible. Since the surge in August of 2025, we've made 9,050 arrests, 900 and some odd guns off the street. That means that they can't be used in carjackings, robberies, murders, and we're making criminals accountable. My office is prosecuting crime. My predecessor in the Biden administration didn't prosecute 60% of the arrests. So now we're prosecuting more crime than ever in the history of the district. I make it very clear we take this stuff seriously. You're they're going to be accountable. I want to change the laws. I'm tired of the D.C. Council and their ridiculous laws that allow judges to have criminals walk after they shoot someone through the chest in a public place. And they say, after I get a conviction, finally, they say, okay, you know what? You should go to college. Goodbye. This is a place that can be changed. The president, to his credit, has done so with the surge and the federal enhancement. That's all it takes. Look, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to fight crime. You make criminals accountable. You make sure you have a prosecutor who understands the mission, and then you change it so that people can have businesses, they can live in the district, their kids can be safe going to school. I want to lock up these young kids, these crews who are part of the gangs that go out with guns. Everybody's got a gun, shooting at each other. They killed an intern who was working in Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, the Doge kid who got the hell beat out of him, but for the grace of God, a cop drove by. He might have been killed as well. Look, this is all it takes. I love the job. I love what I do. Crime is down, but violent crime more than 30%. Homicides down 60%. I mean, we have changed the landscape in the district.
You're seeing these criminal justice policies, though, manifest themselves negatively all over the country. Anywhere you have radical left local politicians in charge, they immediately move to reduce penalties on crime. Even in the District of Columbia, what is the deal? Like, if you're below a certain age, they basically don't prosecute you, even if you commit serious crimes.
Well, they believe that there's something about your prefrontal lobe is not developed. Let me tell you something. If somebody gets shot by a 15-year-old, that shooting is the same. It doesn't matter how old the person was who pulled the trigger. That's why I believe that we've got to lower the age of accountability. Only Congress can change that law. I think the D.C. Council has lost it. They've lost it for years. They've got something called the Youth Rehabilitation Act. They've got the Incarceration Reduction Act. I don't know what these people are thinking, but they brought on the highest crime rates. They brought on the highest murder rate. And we are turning that around totally because of the president.
So there's been remarkable improvement on your watch in the District of Columbia. That's year one. What can we expect out of your office year two? What are your priorities in the next 12 months?
Well, obviously, to continue to fight crime, to get the laws changed. But let me tell you, what people don't talk about is the international aspect of my office, Scott. The truth is, we've got the Pan Am 103 Lockerbie bombing case coming up in July of this year. The fuselage was just brought over from Europe to the United States. We've got the Capitol murder case, the two Israelis who worked at the embassy.
Oh, terrible.
They were shot within a few minutes of me coming here.
Yeah.
We've got the National Guard shooting case that is my case. We've got a lot of cases, by the way. You know all those Venezuelan vessels? Who do you think wrote the warrants to take those vessels down, to give the United States the ability to go on those vessels? My office. We have an incredible office. I love it, and we're going to continue to fight the fight.
That is Judge Jeanine Pirro. She is the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. She's like the Batman right now of the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. If you want criminals taken off the street, you hire Judge Jeanine. We're wrapping up. That's the end of the second hour. We've been at the White House all day. 1 year in office for Donald Trump. I hope you enjoyed it. Common Sense for the American People is back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.